Hello everyone, I'm Luke Melke, and welcome back to another episode of Improv Filmmaking, where we make films together as a YouTube community. Let's roll. Scene 12, take 4. We have shot and rough cut the entire film for Janitor Joe's sequel, which is currently called Mopster Joe. By that title, you can probably figure out what this is about. So we're going to be talking in this video about why and how we did certain things in production and post-production, even some of the pre-production. So hope you enjoy. So here we are with the opening of the film. It is showing Janitor walking back from his last job where he just blew up his previous career. Now this is where the difficulty actually comes in editing. It's not so much finding the right clips, as knowing which right clips to delete. And this is where I'm struggling right now. Do I keep this? It takes about a minute of the film, but it does set the mood as far as who Janitor Joe is, bringing back the sequel of Janitor Joe coming back from his previous explosion. If you haven't seen the previous video, you should check that out. But is it really needed? Does it really actually push the story forward, or should we just jump right into the action? Because the typical way to start a short film is you jump right into the action, you don't set up the whole scene. But it does kind of fit with Janitor Joe. And this is where they call killing your babies, which I think sounds really morbid. So I like the other version. They say it's like killing your darlings, where you have to decide what is really good that isn't good enough to make the final cut, and that's what you have to get rid of. Just like a lot of the other films we've been shooting, we've actually been shooting them in Cinema Canon RAW Light. I know it's technically not a true RAW because it's a RAW Light, but it does have a lot of the same benefits that a traditional RAW has. And some of you might be wondering, what is RAW and why do I care about it and why are you talking about it? Well, first of all, I need to make a video, so I need to film some content. But really the main reason what we want to do through this channel is actually help create a YouTube community that can make films together. So I'm going to walk through why we did what we did. So when you shoot in RAW, the file sizes are way, way, way larger. So you also have the ability to do a lot more stuff with your footage. If we do with a traditional 8-bit, which is kind of what a cell phone would shoot or a traditional camera would shoot, an 8-bit, what they call 420, which I'm not going to go into all the technical details on that. There is a lot of color that's just thrown away. A lot of information is thrown away. Well, with RAW, you keep a lot more of that information, so you can do a lot more tweaking and adjusting in post that you can't do with some of the other lesser sized file types. But with this takes about 256 gigs per half hour. So this whole film with all the shooting was sitting actually right around 500 gigs worth of footage, which I have a lot of storage on my network here, but that still eats up storage pretty fast. But besides all that, why did I shoot in RAW? Well, it gives me a whole lot more color control. You also notice here that I like to keep a rather clean slate as far as my editing board goes here. Some people put files all over the place and they're all interconnected and woven. I try to really simplify everything I'm doing here. And I know this is not a really complicated project, so I could go a lot more crazy here, but I've tried to keep this very simple. But you go into your file here, you can actually adjust what the color temperature is. So light has different colors. Sometimes you have a rather yellow color, so I'll actually see what this looks like. If it's 5600 Kelvin, which is what our lights were balanced at, that is rather bluish light. But if I said, well, the color of the light was actually 3000 Kelvin, which is a little bit more yellow light, well, now it doesn't look right. But I can actually adjust that in post and match it to what I want it to be. So I'm going to put it to 5600, which I know is the color of our light, which we just got, a nice LED light. Now we have natural lighting. But it also comes looking kind of like this when we actually get it out of there. It has a very wide dynamic range. And if we look at the lumetri scope, you see there's a lot of room for the color to get darker or brighter without losing information. So I go and I actually go back and create this to what I like. BT709 is a traditional color science, so basically it interprets how color looks. And I like to use the C-Log3. It just makes it look a little bit closer to what I actually do for my final shot. Brings these lumetri a little bit closer to what they should be. This is absolute dark at 0 and absolute white at the top. So now I want to actually start bringing out some of the color. I start off with doing a basic color correction. So it starts off looking like this. Make sure the highlights are sitting about where they should, the shadows sitting about where they should. And now you'll see the different lumetri scope here. It brings it to a little bit fuller image. Now I actually go through and I label these. I've actually gone through and selected just the curtains. I thought the curtains were a little bit too bright, so I actually selected curtains and made them a little bit darker. I know this is not a final completed version yet here, because you can actually see in the shadows it looks a little bit off, but I'm still working on this. This is not a completed project yet. Then I also did a overall look. What did I want it to look kind of like? Here it is. I pulled back some of the saturations. I tweaked a few other color settings in here. I'm not going to go through all what I did here. And then I also added a final tweaks, which is I adjusted the saturation, brought that back a little bit further, and I also put a vignette around everything. I thought that looked a little bit more like traditional Mopster look when I added the vignette look, because a lot of the old Mopster films, they had kind of just that vignette look, partially because they're on old film, and it was probably partially an artistic choice and style. So that brings it to have a little bit more of that callback to traditional Mopster films. So that's what I'm doing here. We are going to be tweaking this a little bit more. Now I've actually put it out. A few people who've give me some comments what they thought the coloring should look like. If you have any thoughts, suggestions, what you think the coloring would look like, we'd love to hear it. Say, hey, what about this film? What about example here? Make it look a little more like this. We'd love to hear from you. Like we've said before, we really try to make this a community filmmaking project. And in case any of you are wondering, yes, Charlene does make an appearance again in this film, and she is another one of the lead characters. So that was something we really wanted to make sure we brought back both of the original characters of Janitor Joe, and we also have a couple other characters that we're bringing back, or aspects that we're bringing back in this film. So next week we are releasing the film Mopster Joe. Check it out. Thank you so much for watching. It would really be awesome if you would like, comment, share, subscribe. It really does help out the channel, and it also makes me feel good. So thank you.